Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our new show on the firing line here on Stokokino Radio. My name is George Gilson, and we have the pleasure and honor to be hosting today Professor John MIlios, who is the coordinator for Syriza's economic policy. Welcome, Professor MIlios.
I'm very glad to be here with you.
Thanks so much for accepting. Because I know especially that your schedule is extremely burdened these days. We're 1 week before the elections, and certainly there's a lot of excitement in your party because you're on your way to finishing first place and possibly even obtaining a parliamentary majority.
Yes, this is what we hope. And you know, everybody is interested in Syriza and the change in Greece, which is going to start the change all over Europe. So we have to meet a lot of foreign media, journalists, people who are interested, and we are very, very busy.
One of the things I'm sure that people would be interested in insofar as a Syriza victory would have a ripple effect and an impact more broadly on European economic policy, is who is going to be deciding this policy? To my knowledge, there are a few people that are best known: Yannis Dragasakis, Yorgos Stathakis, Efklidis Tsakalotos, yourself. I think Greeks and foreign governments especially would also like to know who's going to be in charge and what will be the division of labor, if you will, on the economic front in a new Syriza-centered government. Well,
people have to wait for a few more days to see the division of labor. Maybe there are going to be other people who will be involved, but this will be the final decision of the party and, of course, of the new prime minister.
I'd like to start this interview backwards, in a sense, because in order to solve a problem, one needs to accurately analyze its causes. So, in your view, who and what factors, starting with the one of greatest importance, led Greece to bankruptcy, and in your opinion, did the Greek left in any way have a hand in this tragic outcome?
Okay, we are talking about the default, that is the inability of the Greek government to service the sovereign debt.
That's right.
The main factor, of course, is the financial crisis of the year 2008. Before that, we had a policy of over-indebtedness, which was not typical only for the Greek case, but also for the United States, the other states of Europe, and so on. So the main factor is the instability that the financial system and what we call the neoliberal form of capitalism creates all over the developed world. At that time, as you remember, we had a major bank crisis just after the mortgage crisis in the United States. We had programs supporting the banks everywhere, in Switzerland, in the European Union, in the United States, and so on. And some countries were proven to be more vulnerable as regards the sovereign debt.
Well, one can't very well blame neoliberal policies for the fact that Greek governments over the decades borrowed well beyond their means, I would think, right? So that didn't start in 2008 by any means.
It started before, but it was creating a bubble of private debt, which was more intense in Ireland, for example, as in Greece, a bubble of real estate mortgages, a bubble of sovereign debt, and so on. So we were the only party, a small party at that time, who were warning the finance ministers of Greece and also the governments of that time that this way cannot last for a long time. And they were telling us that we are backward thinking because all the states of the advanced West do the same thing. And we were saying that this is going to lead to a bubble as it happened in Russia, in Latin America, or in Southeast Asia. And the answer was that these markets of Asia and so on are not integrated markets like the West European or the North American. So after the crisis, the problems became apparent. In Greece, we had policies which deliberately reduced state revenue and were keeping the sovereign debt at a rather constant level, the debt rate at a constant level of something above 100%, although the GDP of the country grew in 12 years by 61%. So we had the denominator of the rate, the GDP, growing from 100 to 161, and the debt ratio being constant because the state revenue was collapsing. And they did this by allowing tax evasion, other illegal practices, as we know now, for example, petroleum product smuggling and so on. And even tax evasion became a policy of social alliances because it started from above and was spreading all over the society.
Now, in handling the current crisis that Greece faces, what do you think are the greatest dangers that any new government will face in dealing with Greece's creditors? And what is your 100-day plan?
Well, we are talking about the Syriza government, of course. That is a government who is going to stop austerity.
You hope?
We are confident. We are sure. This is why we are here. Otherwise, we would belong to the old political milieu, to the old system. But we want to change this.
But how can you stop austerity on your own, Professor, when you're part of an economic union where Germany is playing an imperial role and dictating austerity to the whole European continent? I mean, even the high and mighty France, which was once part of the dual axis of European development, has been forced to kowtow to Angela Merkel's dictates. I mean, it sounds a bit unrealistic, doesn't it?
It is not unrealistic, and I'm going to tell you two main arguments. First, there is nothing which is more powerful than national sovereignty. That is, when the people of a country in Europe, where we have democracy, decides to change course, to change policies, this is a very strong decision which cannot be changed very easily.
Well, the second, you can't say that the French don't have national sovereignty, and when Hollande came to power and Moscovici was appointed, they had to backpedal from their initial electoral pledges. What makes you think that Syriza won't? And they weren't even bankrupt.
Okay, I will answer to your question, but let me first put forward my second argument. So the first one is national sovereignty. The second one is that we are going to negotiate and agree on several targets. One of our targets is, of course, fiscal balance. We don't want to create new deficits, but the method...
You've said, I must interrupt, you have said, your party has said that you do support a balanced budget, right?
Yes.
Which is what you just said.
Yes.
How can you possibly implement and enforce a balanced budget and at the same time reduce austerity and increase social spending? It sounds like quite a magical feat, doesn't it?
It isn't, because the present government has agreed that the country shall create enormous primary surpluses. of 4.5% of the GDP.
So that's what you're rejecting.
We are rejecting this. And if you look at the latest report of the IMF, tables 2 and 3, you are going to notice that the money, the cash flow that the country has to pay, that is the interest, the cash flow for the interest, is something above the half of these enormous primary surpluses that have to be created. And in order to pay not only the interest but also the debt itself. This idea is ridiculous, is not rational. It is only rational from a hidden another point of view, that is, if you want to keep the sovereign debt as an austerity trap, as a recession trap. And this is what we think they wanted to do. But with this we cannot go on, because you know something, all the declared targets of the austerity programs have failed, not only in Greece but everywhere in Europe. They said that we were going to have more jobs by cutting wages. The opposite happened. We said that we are going to have growth if we have austerity, and the whole of Europe is in secular recession, and in many countries in deflation. And they said that we are going to tackle the sovereign debt problem, and we have the debt rate increasing everywhere in Italy, in Spain, in Belgium, in Greece, everywhere.
You said something interesting a moment ago, that in a sense the Germans and our creditors wanted to force Greece into recession.
Yes, but I will start from another point. A very powerful part of the Greek oligarchy wanted to bring the country into recession, because in the last instant, a recession is a program of increasing social inequalities, that is of concentrating wealth, income and power onto a few hands.
So bring the working class and the middle class to their knees, and advance your own interests and profits.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, I'm going to insert something which I hadn't had on my questionnaire, because I just read it, about an interview by Marcel Fratscher. Are you familiar with him? One of the top German economists, who basically came out he's supposed to be a top consultant to the German government, or an important one in any event, who basically came out in favor of a Greek haircut. And we hear more and more voices speaking in that direction.
Yes.
Even from Germany, not necessarily the dominant, establishment media, but we hear more voices like that.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they wonder what's the quid pro quo, because in this world and in this life, and especially if you're defaulted, you don't get anything for nothing. So one of the things that crossed my mind was that, perhaps a bit too cunning, but anyway, if one were to achieve a substantial haircut, one of the things that would seem like an obvious and important quid pro quo would be concessions and deals and agreements regarding Greece's very large hydrocarbon deposits, the gas and oil deposits, because that's one of the things in this whole crisis that's been put under the rug. It's like the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. And I wonder what your opinion is about that.
Okay.
Why is it not discussed, and if you can tell us what's going on behind the scenes?
Okay, first of all, I think that many economists speak in favor of a restructuring, not necessarily a haircut of the nominal value of the Greek debt, because there is no other way out. Otherwise, the debt is going to stay there as a recession trap. and this is not good for Europe as a whole. And we have seen that after the Second World War, we have more than 100 cases of debt restructuring all over the world. And this is why we stress the results of the London Conference on 1953, because it's also a symbolic and an ethical issue. At that time, of course, the conjuncture, the time was different, but there was one common element. The common element is that we had also at that time a country, the Federal Republic of Germany, which was trapped by an enormous debt, and the debtor countries, among whom was also Greece, showed solidarity, allowed the excuse of the larger part of the debt and the repayment of the rest on the basis of an export clause, which is something similar to a growth clause.
A growth conditionality. You pay to the extent that you're able to grow your economy. Right.
Exactly. And this allowed for the so-called German economic wonder. So now Greece is in a similar situation, and the European partners have to show this solidarity.
So basically what you're telling me is that Syriza is willing, it has in the past and very adamantly called for big debt relief, a very large haircut. Now you're saying that perhaps it would be just as well if you got a very hefty extension on the debt repayment and a major reduction, perhaps a zeroing, if you will, of the interest rates. Would that be a feasible and welcome solution as far as the Syriza government would be concerned?
I don't think that we have to go into technical details.
Oh, I think we do.
Well, I'm going to tell you that there are many technical roads to deal with the sovereign debt problem.
Okay.
In November of 2014, I have published a co-authored study along with two other professors named Sotiropoulos and Lapatsioras.
Right.
The study was published by the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College in the United States, and it's the working paper number 819, where we saw...
Papadimitriou?
Yes.
Papadimitriou,
Randall Larray, and others.
He's advocated in the past the G-Euro, a sort of double currency.
Yes, many people from this institute advocated a lot of things. It's a very.
Do you think that's reasonable, a double currency? Not that you're asking for it or you're advocating it, but from the theoretical point of view, could it work?
Many things could work. At the moment, I don't think it's the proper solution to put as our first priority.
Right. But you were talking about your paper, sorry.
Yes, so I was telling that we have shown in this paper that actually the elephant in the room is the ECB. And that the ECB can take action in a way as to allow all Eurozone countries, including Germany, to create a fiscal space which is needed under the present conditions due to the secular recession.
Well, absolutely. The ECB has the keys in its hands.
Yes.
But the other side of your coin that you just mentioned is that the ECB has the power to destroy an economy in one night, just as it did in Cyprus, didn't it?
This is good. This is correct. But we are not in a state of war.
I think we are.
No, we are not. We are in a state of negotiations.
We're in a state of global economic war, don't you think?
As European Union, we have common interests, and if one country is destroyed, then a Lehman Brothers effect to the 100th, not to the square, is going to be created. Even if a bank collapses in any country.
No, you're absolutely right, yes.
So negotiations means that we have different opinions, we have different strategies, but we have also common interests, and we are around the same table in order to find a solution. And the one party agrees, and the other party agrees. And it is not a bilateral question between Germany and Greece. It's a European problem.
Absolutely, we're going to get to that because you've also called for a European debt conference. But because we have a lot of questions and that are very interesting, and I know you have a lot of answers as well, I'd like to speak telegraphically. And because I interrupted you, would you just tell us in a nutshell what the argument of your paper was with your colleagues?
Okay, the argument was that the ECB undertakes the servicing of the debts over a period of time, that is swaps the debt servicing, that is the maturities and the interest payment, with a zero coupon perpetuity.
Zero interest, right?
Zero interest for each and every country of the Eurozone. For all the countries that have a debt ratio above 50%, and keeps the servicing of the debt as long as this debt, which will be around 50+% of the overall sovereign debt of each country, becomes only 20% of the GDP.
Isn't that against the charter of the ECB?
No, it's at the margin of what the ECB can do. I have to remind you that the ECB had a chart that didn't allow bailout. And also the European Union had a no bailout clause. Things change if the relation of forces changes, but the advantages of this solution...
What are your signals about what Berlin would have to say about that?
Yes.
So far they're not positive.
Okay, but Berlin has...
We also hear some whisperings that they might be shifting. Do you think they're shifting?
Yes, there is whispering because they see that they cannot avoid a Greek left government, and that this will be the beginning of a broader change in Europe, given the fact that in Spain we have the left leading the polls.
So basically the Germans are afraid of a domino effect.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
So the cost of this solution will be less than 1.5 trillion euros, which is quite below what the Bank of England, the Fed, and the Bank of Japan have done. And if the ECB keeps the profits from seigniorage, that is from the privilege to issue money, within 4 decades, they are going to cover all the losses.
Right. The ECB buyback of bonds, Greek bonds, for example, what would that save us in terms of Greek sovereign debt? About 25 billion, I read somewhere? I'm not sure.
I think less, about the half of what you said. But
12, let's say.
Yes,
Yeah.
but this is also a good measure, although it is not enough.
Well,
the whole thing is a matter of political will, that is of relation of forces. If we want another course that is a democratic and social Europe, if we want to preserve what has always been the competitive advantage of Europe, that is the social state and the social cohesion,
But nobody wants to preserve that, Professor. Nobody in power. Everything has conspired over the last years and decades to totally destroy the European social state.
You are correct. They are trying to create...
You may be a leftist and you like it, but nobody who has power does, and certainly the markets do.
You are correct. They are trying to create the white Asian worker in Europe. But I dumping. But I travel a lot. I talk to people. I talk to institutions. I see that the climate changes all over Europe, in Belgium, in Germany itself. I participated in a meeting of the Verdi, which is the largest trade union in Germany in the services in the services sector, exactly. And at times I was thinking, where am I? Am I participating in a Syriza conference? All the people were talking about the need to change policy.
But it's interesting that that's going on, if it is, because one of the things that has, by all accounts, helped German growth very much is an understanding, many years ago, I think it started under Schröder, between government, trade unions, and big business.
Yes.
And that they would scale back, that labor would scale back its demands in a way, and that would, but in a way that would be respectable for the standard of living of the German labor.
Yes.
And that in effect helped and promoted German growth.
Exactly.
And I think, and since I'm saying that,
yes.
Do you have any plans? I mean, that's what we probably need in Greece as well. That kind of a trilateral understanding, which we have not even begun to pursue in Greece. How do you intend to pursue it, if you intend to pursue it?
Of course, we intend to pursue it because we want to stop this catastrophe, to start from supporting the most vulnerable parts of the society and to promote cohesion. And since you said before that under Schröder all these things started changing, I'm going to tell you a joke that a German friend told me once attending in one of these meetings. He asked me, do you know who was the last social democratic chancellor of Germany? And I said, what do you mean, Schröder? Schröder, Willy Brandt, and he said, no, Helmut Kohl.
Yeah.
Because although Helmut Kohl was a conservative, he was preserving this social model that Germany always had and was different from what was happening, for example, in Great Britain under Thatcher.
Well, it's interesting because one could say very well in the United States that today's Democratic Party is something akin to the Republican Party of Richard Nixon in terms of social policy and so forth and so on. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if this is correct, but
yes,
maybe you know better.
Now that you're talking about your contacts with institutions and markets, there was a very interesting at some point, but we didn't really learn very much about the details. You and some of your colleagues traveled to London to speak to certain market representatives. Whom did you meet with, and what was the crux of your conversation at that time?
Well, I have to tell you that we started meeting major economic players.
Because the leftists in Greece, and they would think, oh my God, they're going and meeting with the markets, they're going to sell out.
No, it's not the case. And you have seen that from what it was leaked to the press, that not everybody was satisfied.
Who did you meet with? Who was at the table?
Major banks, international, American, German banks, the Deutsche Bank.
Morgan Stanley?
Morgan Stanley.
They were there?
Yeah.
And what did they ask you?
Let me tell you before that we started doing these meetings just after the elections of 2012.
Right.
They wanted
which brought Mr. Syriza to power.
Yes, but brought us as a second party to be the major opposition.
Absolutely, yes.
And they were interested in learning what our actual program is, what we believe, and so on.
Some reports said that they were astonished, and they said, my God, these guys are from another planet, and their program seems like an old communist program.
Yes,
is that correct?
This is what they have leaked to the press. So
the investors,
one investor, just one investor.
Mm-hmm. From which?
It was one person from Capital, from the Capital Group. One.
Is that Soros?
No. It's another fund.
Was anybody from Soros there?
I don't think so. No. And the fund itself said that this was a personal opinion. afterwards, made a press release. Anyway, I have to tell you this. The investors, the banks and so on belong to two major categories. The one is the long-term investors who are very interested in social and economic stability and who to a large extent think that austerity is destroying the European Union.
Right. Was Goldman Sachs at that meeting as well?
Yes, they were. Yes. And so that we have to take care also of the demand side of the economy, not only the supply side.
Right. Okay, we said that leak about your view being unrealistic was from one person. And
yes. But there is another group of investors who are very interested in short-term profits from underpriced privatizations, from selling their NPLs, the red loans, to very low prices, from gains in the Athens Stock Exchange and so on. And it's obvious.
Would those investors include Goldman and Morgan?
I don't think so. I cannot say for anyone, but there are these two groups. I think that the big players are interested for long-term gains, and they are interested, therefore, in having a stable economic environment, and this we are going to create. We have as our priority the interests of the social majority of the people living in Greece, but of course we want to be solvent. That is, the Greek state shall be in a position to borrow money from the markets at a low interest rate if and when it wants to borrow money.
I want to keep on that meeting because it's the only thing we know about your Syriza's relations to the investment banks, that the markets, as we say. That plays such a crucial
I have
role.
to tell you that
what did they want to know, and what did you tell them?
Okay. First of all, I have to tell you that we are constantly meeting major economic institutions, not under the eyes of publicity. To all of them.
And I think you do very well to do so.
Yes, because we have to explain them what our program is.
Yeah.
We do not want to let them learn about us from New Democracy,
Absolutely
PASOK,
not.
or the Greek embassies.
And because the Greek situation is so precarious, it's best that both sides have no surprises once you come to power, isn't it?
Yes, in a way, this is correct.
That's
of course.
essential,
So
then, isn't it?
we show them, we tell them what our program is. We tell them why the country cannot go on with austerity, that these policies are unsustainable because the society cannot continue in this way, that they are creating a very unstable social situation and an unjust social situation, and we are there to change this. And we discuss how we are going to protect the banking system and change things in the direction of the public interest and so on.
I think reading all the signals in the last days and weeks, my conclusion has been, and please comment on it if you will, that Germany and the investors and the capital markets, in a way, are hopefully expecting and wanting a Syriza government, in the sense that once the negotiation is over, and if it comes to a reasonable and mutual conclusion, that a Syriza government from the social point of view will be the best positioned to implement whatever is agreed. Do you agree with that rationale?
Yes, given the fact that they also have a long-term investment interest.
Absolutely.
The country now has a very big growth potential, and it is expected that many players from the country and from abroad would like to see the economy growing again. So we are going to do this by supporting the society, first of all, and I think that we are going to cooperate without continuing these policies, which have to stop, of course.
Okay. Your program, economic program, is basically summarized in the words of the Thessaloniki program.
Yes.
Which Alexis Tsipras, the president of Syriza, unveiled at the International Thessaloniki Fair, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
Your party has costed that program at 11 billion euros approximately, more or less. Is that correct? Right.
Yes.
But it seems that sometimes your party seems to ignore that Greece is bankrupt and that it doesn't have the money and it has to find it somewhere. And, one wonders, what makes you think that they'll allow you to go on an 11 billion euro shopping spree, for God's sake?
No, this is a program which is going to be financed by resources which will be reallocated or created in the country, and which we have to see and very closely and see which these resources are. So, first of all, we have all reports, official reports, even by the head of the Transparency and Human Rights Secretariat, Mr. Surlas, the General Secretary of Transparency and Human Rights, that the tax evasion and other illegal practices deprive the Greek states.
Oh, come on, Professor. Greek governments for 40 years have been saying we're going to combat.
Yes, but
you don't have time to combat tax evasion.
We have time, because Surlas talks about 12.5 billion euros a year. We are saying that we are going to collect only 3, and I can tell you a lot of examples.
Where are you going to get it? From which debtors? I mean, everybody's busted. They don't even have the money. The real economy is destroyed. Businesses are shut down.
This is correct concerning the majority of the people.
Right.
But at the other end of the line, you have people who do not pay nothing. You have those lists which are not been have not been utilized. I will tell you.
The Lagarde list, the Luxembourg list.
Yes, and
okay.
I will tell you only one example.
That takes a lot of time too.
Yes, not so much time if you reorganize the agencies, the services, the tax authorities. Right. Yes, because you have, for example, only one example. 55,000 people who have legally exported more amounts of money of more than 100,000 euros during the crisis years. 24,000 out of them have exported money which is more than what they declare to the authorities as their wealth or income. In a period of 2 years, they have inspected 407 cases. You know why? Because they have dismantled the tax authorities. We are going to reorganize it. We are going to tackle the petroleum product smuggling, the petroleum smuggling problem, because it's a problem that can be tackled very fast. We have to put an input-output system in the refineries, and also for GPS-type devices in the whole circuit.
Yeah, but the big money that's been taken out is in offshores, basically, isn't it? And you really can't get that back because of the rules.
So we are talking only about 3 billion euros, not
only about 3 billion.
Yes,
okay.
3 billion euros are going to come if the people are allowed to pay their arrears to the tax authorities and the social security system to the level they can. That
right.
is up to 30% of their disposable income.
Okay, hold on a minute. So let's say I, George Gilson, have taken out €1 million during the crisis, and I've put it in a Swiss bank. And you check it and you see, George Gilson doesn't really have the wherewithal from his job and his income to have €1 million. So what do? You go to the Swiss bank and you lodge a lawsuit and you wait forever to get the money, or what do you do?
I imagine that you
How do you do that? I'm not an economist.
I imagine that you have an economic activity in the country. You have, for example, an enterprise. We are going to very carefully scrutinize your enterprise, tell you that you have a very big discrepancy here, and we have to deal it. And you will be obliged to pay taxes and some penalties.
Taxation is a very important thing for the Greek people because they have been vastly overtaxed in the last 5 years. I'd like to ask you some very specific questions that Syriza leader Alexis Tsipras has diligently avoided answering. And the one is very simple and direct, and I'd like a very simple and direct answer from you as well. Exactly what is the borderline above which the total value of one's property will be considered μεγάλη ακίνητη περιουσία, or large property, which will be taxed at a much higher rate? Can you please tell me that amount?
We have said that we are going to bring back the old system. This means that if you have a landed property, real estate with a value of above 200,000 euros, you are going to start paying something little, but up to 200,000 you are not going to pay for this landed property. But we are going to have a lot of stairs, so gauges, so that people who
brackets,
exactly, brackets, tax
so
brackets. So
you're saying to me that above 200,000 is μεγάλη ακίνητη περιουσία.
Above 200,000, you will start to pay something, a little. If you have
below 200,000, you don't pay anything.
Yes.
Okay. Above 200, but you have retained the concept of μεγάλη ακίνητη περιουσία.
Yes.
Where does it start? I want to know specifically.
Well, 200,000 euros from that point on
is μεγάλη
ακίνητη περιουσία, in the sense that you start paying something for the property. We want to have property taxes, but the property taxes will be supplementary to the income taxes. This is a just system. The property taxes have to play a redistributive role.
What would be the tax rate for μεγάλη ακίνητη περιουσία?
It will start from a very small percentage. If you are 10,000 above the 200,000 limit, and it will grow according to what it has been in the past. We are in the first period, we are going to bring back what was valid for this country before they have introduced this over-taxation by EMFIA. We are going to stop EMFIA by a law.
All right, it doesn't really matter what we call it, if it's EMFIA or MEMFIA or whatever. But if I recall correctly, the old μεγάλη ακίνητη περιουσία borderline was about 450,000, or what was it, 500,000?
The fact is that the
old system? Was it 500?
The old system was 200,000. The last version was that above 200,000 you were paying something, very little. So we are the general idea is.
Let me ask you another question.
The general idea, I will tell you the general idea. We are going to reduce the taxes for the low and middle incomes. and we are going to sustain public revenue by a just tax system where everybody pays what he or she can.
Okay. Your colleague, Syriza, a few days ago told us about the personal income tax brackets, and he said that the highest income tax bracket would be perhaps 50% or more, which would make it among the highest in Europe, as I understand it. The problem with that is that most people who make a lot of money in Greece don't declare it, right? So wouldn't you be actually losing money by taxing these quote-unquote rich and cutting the taxes of the middle class?
We are not going to start by raising the nominal tax coefficients. Because if you look at the OECD data,
First of all, is Sakalotos right about his projection of the 50%, or is it something that's being discussed still?
It's something that is being discussed still. So I'm telling you that we do not have to stick with the nominal tax coefficients, but with what the OECD defines as the effective tax coefficients. In Greece, we have many exception regimes. So we are going to discuss all these regimes, and we are going to have tax justice so that the people start believing that we have to support our state. We have to pay our taxes if we want to have good roads or a healthcare system.
And that brings us to my next question, which is probably the most important question in this interview, because in order to pay your taxes, whether you're middle class, poor, or rich, you have to have a job. And the biggest problem Greece is facing in terms of social issues today is its huge unemployment. We have unemployment in this country that's comparable to unemployment in the United States during the Great Depression.
Yes.
And that's a time when people were jumping off of buildings because they had lost all their money and so forth and so on. I don't really see any party, including Syriza, having a comprehensive, detailed job stimulus program. And I really find that shocking. I can't believe that we are in a campaign, albeit a brief campaign, and we don't have any, including Alexis Tsipras, coming out talking about a job stimulus program. You've talked about making 300,000 jobs, presumably connected to the state, which is another problem of statism, rather than talking about what particular initiatives and policies will create jobs in the private sector. Do you have any idea of what you're going to do? Because you're not talking about it.
Well, I have to tell you that our program is very well defined and studied. And of course we want to promote jobs by letting the economy grow.
Let's get to the specifics, Professor. Yes, what are your proposals?
We have said that we need all forms of investment, public, big, small, private, anything. But when the country to attract private investments, you need measures. To implement public investment, you need money, which means you have to get it from Germany and France and everybody else. Okay, so also to reallocate resources, but I have to tell
very little time left.
Okay, I have to tell you the following: when the economy was growing with a growth rate of 4%,
right,
the new jobs created were around 40,000. If you divide 1,500,000 unemployed through 40,000,
right,
it's many decades. So we have to have
a miserable record.
Yes,
and it's that's much more difficult now than then.
Yes, so that's why we need some unconventional measures, and these are not statism.
1, 2, 3, please.
They are projects which will be financed by the state, and also,
for example, please.
For example, healthcare utilities, which will work along with the Voithia στο σπίτι health at home, or the renovation of buildings at the center of the big cities, or the infrastructure and so on, which will be paid by the state. It's a part of the 11 billion program which is going to be financed in order to create a wage-led growth or a labor-led growth, that is to subsidize labor, and this is going to create multiplication effects will help everybody.
Probably
the small enterprises, the private sector, the big enterprises, everyone.
Probably it's my fault, but we didn't get around to saying, aside from combating tax evasion, where exactly you're going to get the rest of the 11 billion. You said 3 billion from tax evasion.
Okay, 3 billion.
That leaves 8 billion left. Where are you going to get the
3 billion from arrears. Arrears are more than 100.
Arrears and tax payment. Where's the other 8 coming from? 8 billion.
No. We have already 6, 3 and 3. The other 6, the 3 is from the Greek Stability Fund. This is money given for the banks.
That leaves 5 left.
That leaves 3 left. 1.5 is the old ESPA, that is the funding from the European Union. These are money which shall go to social cohesion initiatives, and we have left only 1.3 left, which will be part of the negotiations for the new ESPA.
By the way, we talked about these oligarchs and all that sort of thing. Let me ask you a specific question, which is a very major project and one of the biggest prime plum properties in Europe, probably, Elliniko. Mr. Latsis has gotten that property for development for a pittance, for a song, as we say. Are you prepared to cancel that contract or renegotiate it?
Yes, we are prepared to open the file and examine it very thoroughly. This is what we all have said, starting from the president of the party. It's a matter of justice and also a matter of public interest.
Would you redeclare the tender? The arrondissement.
Yes.
Would you
yes, if it's necessary, of course. We are not going to play the role of the justice, but we are going to bring everything that we shall be examined in front of of justice if there are illegal elements. Not only in this case, but also in other cases, we have a lot of evidence that there might be some illegal agreements or some violation of the way
European Union regulations.
Yes, concerning transparency.
Well, there was only one bidder, wasn't there?
Yes, this is a problem.
Where in the world do you see that?
Yes, and they haven't bid. So there is no bid for the public frequencies. This is another issue.
If you're serious about justice and combating the oligarchs, there's only one way to do it: to redeclare the tender, the competition.
Exactly, and this is not the only case.
We
are decided. We are determined. We want to fight corruption, clientelism, and a public sector which has these brakes, cannot work to the benefit of the people, cannot boost growth because it has the brakes of clientelism and corruption.
We only have a couple more minutes left. I started the issue of the oligarchs with a very specific case, which is that of the development of Elliniko, right by the seashore. Any Greek will tell you that this country is basically governed by a handful of oligarchs. The governments are in a very substantial way puppets of those oligarchs. Presumably Alexis Tsipras and your party don't want to be the puppet of these oligarchs.
Of course we don't want, and we are outside of this picture.
How do you intend to make them pay their fair share and limit their power and control over the country? Very, very quickly, 1, 2, 3 telegraphically.
Open, transparent procedures and processes. The public interest, first of all, comes first. The legal framework concerning environment, concerning labor relations, concerning state revenues. If we have the people supporting us, we can succeed. We know that the battle, the conflict may be very furious or strong sometimes.
They'll try to topple you.
Yes, but we are sure that the power of the people and of a government representing the people is higher.
Power to the people, then. Eh?
Okay.
Well, Professor John MIlios, it was a pleasure to have you here.
It was my pleasure.
Very directly, I think. I wish you the best of luck. To your credit, perhaps you're not even a candidate for Parliament. I'm sure you'll have other ways to continue.